Long ball is going to go for a touchdown. The game's over. Webster Slaughter.
Metcalf will go for the score. Unbelievable.
45-40. Run, William, run. He's got blockers in front. 5. Touchdown. Joshua Cribbs turns disaster into a score.
Sight wants it all on this one for Logan, and he is there.
Jim Brown to the 30. Jim Brown is going to go in for another touchdown.
The Cleveland Browns select Baker Mayfield.
Wow. It is Baker Mayfield.
I woke up feeling dangerous.
Hello, Cleveland. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 2 of the 1085 Gridiron Podcast. I am your host, Anthony Joki, and as always, I'm joined by my fantastic co-host, Jack McCurry of BigPlay.com. How you doing tonight, Jack?
I'm good. I'm honored you called me fantastic. I don't know what's going on with you over there, but I think you're pretty fantastic too, Anthony.
I think it's my sleep-deprived state right now, so you better soak it all in now, because I don't know if it's ever going to happen again. But, we're here to talk Browns, and today on this episode we have our Browns season preview for you. Yesterday we kind of overviewed the Tennessee Titans. We went into some depth about the game, but we kind of gave a brief overview of Tennessee this year and what you can expect from them. We're going to have our game preview tomorrow night, so be on the lookout for that. And if you missed the Tennessee overview, be sure to check that out as well. Jack, as we get into the season here with the Cleveland Browns, we wanted to give everybody a full and thorough season preview of this team. And, I can't remember a time when this Browns team has been so hyped throughout the offseason. I think it was a little bit there after Johnny Manziel was drafted, but maybe a little bit after the season Derek Anderson had when they went 10-6 and just missed the playoffs. I think this is about 10 times that kind of excitement that we've had this offseason. And are you ready to finally start playing some football and getting through these games?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, going back, I've been a full-time Browns fan since 2007. And like you mentioned, 2008 was big. There was big expectations that year. And definitely 2014, there was big expectations. Last year, there wasn't big expectations, but I think a lot of people expected a step in the right direction, and they did take a big step. But this is definitely the most anticipated Browns season in a long time. Turn of the team. But this is definitely the most hype because, all the moves they made, the amount of talent on this team, and, just the expectations are through the roof for this team. And I really just can't wait for it to get started on Sunday.
Yeah, there have been a lot of changes to this Browns team this past offseason. And obviously the biggest one is they hired Freddie Kitchens to be the head coach. They hired Todd Monken to be the offensive coordinator, Steve Wilks to be the defensive coordinator, and Mike Freiford to be the special teams coordinator. Jack, when you look at those guys that they brought in, obviously we know what Freddie was able to do as the interim offensive coordinator last season after Hugh Jackson was fired, and Todd Haley as well. What do you think the two other guys, specifically Monken and Wilks, are going to be able to bring to this team and to this coaching staff?
With Monken, you get an experienced offensive play caller, an offensive mind that, Freddie's going to be able to bounce some things off of. He's going to be able to lean on him a lot. But obviously, we know at the end of the day, Freddie's calling the plays. But I think Monken is definitely involved with the game planning and, helping Freddie scheme up some offensive plays. And when it comes to Steve Wilks, I mean, we're going from, Greg Williams, who was very vocal, very out in the open about things. We really haven't seen a lot of Steve Wilks. I think he's all business. He's quiet, and he's just working. And I think that's good. I think that's good for the defense. And, I'm just looking forward to seeing what he's going to do with some of these guys. We know that Greg Williams didn't fully utilize Myles Garrett I think Steve Wilkes is going to get everything out of Myles Garrett, and the fact that they added more pieces on that side of the ball to what was already established here just makes me think that Wilkes, he came here because I think A, the talent, and B, to resurrect his career, because he really got a raw deal in Arizona, being fired only after 1 year. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what both Monken and Wilkes can do on their sides of the ball.
Yeah, I think the biggest question lies with Freddie Kitchens, the head coach. You have all these personalities on this team, high-profile personalities with Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, Baker Mayfield, David Njoku to an extent. Do you think Freddie will be able to handle all these personalities? Because I remember he had a quote this past during the offseason, said that he's going to let them be who they are, and he's not going to try and rein anybody in. Is that a good way for him to handle all this, or do you think that it could get away from him?
I think it could get away from him, but I think what you've seen for the most part, I don't think there's really personalities. Outside of Baker Mayfield, Landry, he's vocal, but he's all business. And it seems for the most part, Odell Beckham's been all business. Nick Chubb's all business. Njoku's kind of vocal. We've heard him a little bit. None of these personalities that, the media likes to talk about, I haven't really seen it yet. And, maybe if things don't go well, you might see more of their personalities. But I just don't think, what the media has been putting out there is all what it's cracked up to be. I think you have a lot of football players that are hungry, that are determined to, shock the world and, bring Cleveland back to what it used to be. And, I think Freddie saying, I'm going to let them be themselves, I think that's what you've seen so far. And I haven't seen anything that's giving me a cause of concern that these so-called personalities are going to get in the way of what could be a special time here in Cleveland for the Cleveland Browns.
Is there any area about this coaching staff that concerns you going into the season? Because you do have a rookie head coach. You have a defensive coordinator who was head coach for 1 year. You have Todd Monken, who was an offensive coordinator before, so he knows that role very well. But how do you have any question marks about this coaching staff?
The only thing is, with Freddie calling the offensive plays and trying to be the head coach, we've seen that happen. Of course, it happens all across the league. The only question is, does he have too much on his plate? And I really don't think he does, but, that's why Todd Monken's here, to make sure that Freddie doesn't have his hands completely in on the offense to where he's not focusing on defense or focusing on special teams. Is Freddie going to get caught up in some stuff? Maybe, just because expectations are high. He's a rookie head coach. He's trying to prove to John Dorsey and the Haslam family that he was the right choice. So, maybe he gets in over his head too a little bit, but I'm not worrying yet just because from what I've seen so far, Freddie's been pretty level-headed, and it feels like the work is getting done so far here in Cleveland.
I went back and watched some of what Todd Monken did with Tampa Bay, and I think that Baker Mayfield can really succeed having Todd Monken as his offensive coordinator. What do you think Todd can do to build upon Baker's success last season, where he set the rookie touchdown record? Did a fantastic job once he came in to be the starting quarterback. How do you think Monken can be able to build upon that and help Baker Mayfield out?
I think he's going to implement a lot of the vertical passing attack that we've seen in Tampa the last few years. Down in Tampa, he had Deshaun Jackson to work with. He had O.J. Howard. He had Mike Evans. He had Chris Godwin. Now he's coming to Cleveland, and Monken gets to use Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, Rashard Higgins, Antonio Callaway once he's back from suspension, David Njoku, Demetrius Harris. Not to mention that Monken's also going to be able to build upon, with Baker's success, with a strong running game. You got Nick Chubb coming into his second year, and expectations are high. And then after week 9, Kareem Hunt comes back. You also have Dontrell Hilliard, who will take the void that Duke Johnson left when he got traded to Houston. So Monken's got a lot to work with, and I think, building on Baker's success, he's got a lot of weapons, and he knows Baker's going to throw it around. So he's going to have to design up some play calls with Freddie to make sure that, they rely on the running game, but also know that they have that deep vertical attack that, a lot of people are excited for, and something Cleveland hasn't seen in quite some time in terms of offensive firepower.
I think the biggest thing for this offense and Todd Monken is because the Browns have such a threat in the running game, and because they have wide receivers such as Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry and all the others that we mentioned. I think the play action game is going to be something that we haven't seen here in a very long time. When we've run play action for the past 20 years, no team was biting on it because they knew that they were going to get beat over the top. And I think that's one aspect that Todd Monken can implement along with Freddie Kitchens into this offense to where they could really be successful at offense.
Yeah, definitely. The play action attack is going to be something that I think Cleveland's going to thrive on this year, because just when you get that running game going and, teams think they're just going to bury him with the running game with a heavy dose of Chubb or, implementing Kareem Hunt in the mix once he's back. But then all of a sudden the Browns are going to hit you with that play action pass that's going to go down the field, or even on like a quick slant to Landry. You have that deep threat of Beckham you have to worry about. You have to worry about Higgins, who is always going to be somebody Baker has in his back pocket. And then once Callaway comes back, he's another vertical threat. Then you have to worry about Njoku as well. So the amount of talent in that passing attack, you can't ignore any facet of the Browns offense because they can hit you in a variety of ways.
I've also seen fantastic play actions where they set up the play action and then they'll run a screen off of that. And there's so many ways to attack the defense. And you've seen Sean McVay do it with the Los Angeles Rams, and I think that Monken and Kitchens will be able to do the same thing based on the amount of weapons that they have here in Cleveland. Let's talk a little bit more about Steve Wilks. He did get a raw deal out there in Arizona, but we are able to benefit from that, having him here this season. What do you think he really brings to this team, and are you excited to see how he's going to let Myles Garrett, that talented defensive line, completely thrive, as well as kind of running a 4-2-5 using three safeties in his scheme? Are you excited to watch that?
Yeah, definitely. What he brings, and our buddy Jake Burns, did great work over in Cleveland.com when the Browns hired Steve Wilks, and he talked about how he blitzed a lot in Arizona. He blitzed 51% of the time, and when you have a defensive front that has Myles Garrett and Olivier Vernon and Sheldon Richardson and Larry Ogunjobi, you have to wonder that offensive lines that the Browns have to play against, they're going to have to do a lot to keep those four from getting to the quarterback. And if they're going to blitz, he's going to come at you in a number of ways. And, that defense, we've seen it with Greg Williams, and we've seen, it work most of the time, but I just don't think he truly used and was fully effective with what he had already. Now, clearly the Browns added some in the offseason, but he had guys here last year. He had Ogunjobi, he had Garrett, he had Jannard Avery, but those guys had to play a lot because we didn't have the depth. Now that we have the depth on that defensive side on the front seven, it's really it makes you wonder what the Browns are going to be able to do now, because all that talent up front is going to cause a nightmare for offenses.
The Browns' special teams over the last few years have really struggled. They had a really good kicker back there in Phil Dawson. At one point, they had a great kick returner and punt returner and Josh Cribbs back there. But, ever since both those players left the Browns, special teams hasn't really been the same. What do you think Mike Pfeiffer can bring to the special teams unit, and can he possibly restore some, I don't want to say glory, but restore some of the luster that the special teams unit used to have?
Well, I mean, anybody was an upgrade over Amos Jones as special teams coordinator, but when the Browns were able to get Prefer the Minnesota Vikings, it was a huge get for Freddie Kitchens and the coaching staff, because Prefer has always had a solid special teams unit. And I think, what he brings is hopefully, he brings that toughness and physicality that you need in a special teams unit. And hopefully, Minnesota has had their issues with kicker as well, but you just hope that the Browns can find a solid kicker, and hopefully they found one with Austin Siebert, and that, Prefer is going to be able to just, inject confidence in Siebert and show him that, you can go out there in the tough environments of Cleveland Stadium or any stadium across the league, and you're going to be able to put points on the board when we need you to. And, as for the punting game, the Browns have always had a solid punting game because they have done it a lot since '99. And you just wonder, with a rookie punter like Jamie Gillian, is this a good situation for him? No one's going to be able to replace Britton Colquitt, but you hope Gillian will grow as the season goes on and become a solid punter. There's questions about, his accuracy, and everybody's in love with his coverage ability and how he's a tackler, but we need him to pin the ball down inside the 20. That's what good punters do. So Gillian's gonna have to learn that. Siebert's gonna have to learn to become an accurate kicker in high pressure situations, and hopefully Prefer can help those guys as they grow as rookies this season.
I think the one thing with Gillian is I don't think we're going to have to worry about punting too much this season, and I know that's going to be a nice change. And week 8, week 9, I don't think we'll have to be worrying about who's punting for us, and that'll be nice for sure. All right, we wanted to ask a major question about each position group on the Browns to move forth in our Brown season preview. So we have roughly 7 or 8 questions here, covering each position group. So, Jack, to start this out, obviously talk about the quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield. What does Baker have to do to avoid having a sophomore slump this season?
The biggest thing with Baker is he's got to limit the turnovers. Last year he threw 14 interceptions as a rookie, and, that's common for rookie quarterbacks. They're going to, make their mistakes and hopefully learn off of it. The one thing with Baker is try not to be too aggressive with the ball. I would try to say label him as a game manager, and a lot of people are going to take that as the wrong way, but I don't think necessarily when you think of game manager, I'm sure people are going to think of, Andy Dalton, maybe a Brian Hoyer type that tries not to turn the ball over. With Baker, that's what I want him to do, but I still want him to manage the clock, drive the ball down the field. Don't take aggressive shots. Do what you did last year. Quick, accurate throws, move the chains, have drives that, gives the defense a rest, rely on the running game and just avoid turnovers. Like, I think if he does that, I think he could take a big step forward and be what everyone thinks he's projected to be. And that's, one of the next top 10 quarterbacks in the league. But also limit your turnovers. Try not to be over aggressive. But with the weapons we have, I'm sure he's going to be wanting to take his shots down the field. And sometimes it leads to turnovers, but hopefully it leads to a lot of touchdowns.
Yeah, it's going to definitely lead to a lot of touchdowns. We have a over and under thing here that we'll talk about in a little bit. I think Baker is primed to have a great year. There's all the talent in the world around him. I think he has 2 coaches that understand him very well, in Freddie Kitchens and Todd Monken. I like what Monken is going to be able to bring to Baker Mayfield to help attack defenses. I think that's going to be extremely beneficial for him. So Baker right now has all the tools in the world, and I think you hit right on the head with the turnovers aspect. As long as Baker doesn't turn it over by throwing picks or taking sacks and losing fumbles, I think he's going to be in really good shape, and he's definitely going to be one of the top quarterbacks in this league. All right, moving to the skill position players. So we're kind of lumping the running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends into this question. Who would you say is the most underrated skill position player, offensive skill position player on the Browns roster?
I'm going with the running back, Nick Chubb. I mean, when everybody talks about the Browns offense, they're talking about Baker, they're talking about Odell and Landry and Njoku, and a lot of people, I think, are sleeping on Nick Chubb. I mean, last year he started off pretty slow, and then the second half of the year he exploded, when they traded Carlos Hyde, and he came on and shown that he could be a 3-down back and a very effective one, too. In the second half of the season, November and December, he had at least 300 yards rushing in both months, November and December. In November, he averaged almost 5 yards a carry. In December, he averaged 4.8 yards a carry. Now he's going to be the lead back. There's no doubt about it. He's had a quiet offseason. He's been working his tail off, and I think he is going to be, one of the big names on offense, and I think he's going to emerge as one of the top running backs in the league. And even when Kareem Hunt comes back, I still think you're going to give Chubb the ball a lot during that second half of the year, and especially when the weather gets cold, I think Chubb's going to be a guy that you rely on heavily, because if the weather gets ugly, and it's bound to in Northeast Ohio, he is an AFC North type running back that you're just going to give the ball 20, 25, even 30 times a game, and he's going to, just chug along and give you yardage and touchdowns. So I think Chubb's the most underrated offensive skill player.
Yeah, even with how impressive he was last season, he got to the point where John Dorsey had to trade Carlos Hyde just so Hugh Jackson could get him on the football field. That's how good he was looking. And I think Chubb...
Anthony.
I was talking.
Anthony.
I was talking. I just forgot to unmute me, or you hearing me. I think Chubb is really going to be able to benefit from the play calling and everything. And, he's a guy who John Dorsey had to trade Carlos Hyde, who was in front of him, just so Hugh Jackson would play him last season. And he made the most of that opportunity, and I think he's definitely going to do the same again this year for the Browns offense. Even like you mentioned, when Kareem Hunt comes back, Chubb is still going to be able to roll. He's going to be the main back. They're going to use Kareem Hunt differently. So I'm really excited for what Chubb is going to be able to bring to this offense this season. So you can make an argument that the biggest question on the Browns team is the offensive line. And I want to know from you, with the guys that they picked up on the waiver wire and the couple trades that they made, is the offensive line going to become a solid, cohesive unit at any point during this season?
I mean, you certainly hope so. The second half of last year, they really did like a complete 180 once Freddie Kitchens took over as the offensive coordinator. He designed, quick passes using double tight end sets, and the offensive line looked really well, to a point where no one was really talking about the issues that the line had until we got to that third preseason game against Tampa. Obviously, we have a solid left guard in Batonio, a solid center in J.C. Treader, but then you have questions at left and right tackle with Robinson and Hubbard, and of course the right guard, which is currently Eric Kush. I really think that they can be a solid unit, but I think it's going to depend on how the offensive play calling goes, and you would hope that Kitchens will still implement those quick passes. And, using double tight end sets, although Demetrius Harris hasn't shown enough to be that solid blocker that Darren Fells was last year, but you hope that they're going to utilize some of that stuff because it worked. And, Baker Mayfield looked really good when he was able to utilize that offensive personnel. With the additions they had, obviously Cush knows that he's got Wyatt Teller there looking over his shoulder, ready to take that right guard position if needed. And then, of course, Drew Forbes was making progress prior to his knee injury. He could be back the second half of the year. He could take over as the right guard. So we'll see how it shakes out. But you got to hope that these guys can become a cohesive unit starting Sunday, and we don't have to worry about the line at all.
Yeah, I think that's something else that could really hinder Baker Mayfield and his growth this season is the number of sacks that the offensive line gives up. And, that relies on, obviously, the receivers getting open, the linemen blocking, but, ultimately Baker Mayfield getting the football out as quick as possible. So I hope the offensive line can become a cohesive unit, but I'm not getting my hopes up completely. I'm sure once we come around to draft season next year, we'll be looking for more offensive linemen. I'm sure our buddy Stephen Thomas is thrilled for that with all the mock drafts that he does. But, the offensive line is, to me, it's the biggest question mark. Hopefully those questions are answered early on in the season and we don't have to worry about it. If we do have to worry about it, I think it's going to be a long year. But I think the Browns will make most of what they have at this point and still be successful at this time. So we go to one questionable unit in the offensive line to the really dominant one on the other side on the defensive line. Jack, when you look at this defensive line, I know everybody is really hyped about what they can do in terms of getting after the quarterback relentlessly. And I was wondering from you, is this defensive line going to be as dominant as advertised? And what do you think could hinder them reaching that peak level that we all think they could get to?
I really do think that they can be as dominant as advertised. When you look at what they did in that first half against Tampa Bay, and granted, it was a poor Buccaneers offensive line, but they had 6 sacks, and they absolutely mauled Jameis Winston. And I think, looking forward to Sunday, with Taylor Lewan out and Jack Conklin potentially being out, you could see the same result again. I think this unit could be the most dominant defensive front in the league. I really do. With Myles Garrett entering year 3, he's ready to break out and finally show people why exactly he was the number 1 pick a couple years ago. Olivier Vernon coming back to his natural position as a 4-3 defensive end after the Giants used him as an outside linebacker. Then you have Ogunjobi and Richardson inside. The only thing that could plague them is, I think, injuries. Myles Garrett has had his ankle injuries, and so has Olivier Vernon. So what I think could hinder them is injuries, because I think that the talent is there, and those guys are going to work. And like I said, this team is chasing greatness, and I think they're going to work at it to get there. And I think the only thing that could slow it down would be injuries for sure.
So behind this defensive line, they have Joe Schobert, they have Christian Kirksey, but they also have 2 rookie linebackers in Sione Takitaki and Mack Wilson. What kind of impact do you think that those 2 rookie linebackers can make in year 1 with the Browns, and do you eventually see them as future replacements for Christian Kirksey and Joe Schobert?
Yeah, I definitely think they can make an impact. In comparison to other years, like we were expecting our rookies in recent years to make an immediate impact from day 1. And, this year, I look at our top rookies, they're all backups right now, and they're able to learn behind some solid pros. With Wilson and Takitaki, I think obviously you want them to be, stout on special teams and then be able to come in and give Schobert and Kirksey a breather. That would be great if they can, maintain drives and be able to make plays, solid plays as rookies, and be able to give those guys a breathers, I think would be a huge thing. And, as it pertains to the future, I definitely could see these guys replacing or Kirksey and Schobert. I definitely could see Wilson and Taki doing that. I would like to hope that the Browns are going to make an effort to keep Schobert because he's definitely one of the underrated linebackers in the league. And we all know what Kirksey's been to this team on the field and off the field as a veteran leader. Obviously we're going to have to make changes to be able to keep the young core around, but I feel good about what I've seen out of Wilson and Taki so far. So I definitely think their future's bright, and learning behind Schobert and Kirksey is only going to make them better.
We mentioned earlier about Steve Wilks and the 4-2-5 and using 5 defensive backs. And, last 2 years, they've taken a couple corners and Denzel Ward and Greedy Williams. They brought in Terrence Mitchell. When you look at the rest of that secondary, Jack, who is going to have to step up the most in the secondary to give the defense what it needs on the back end?
When I look at this whole secondary unit, I think, the strong safety position is definitely the one to watch. And it's actually the whole entire safety position minus Demarius Randall. We obviously know what Demarius Randall has brought to this team as a leader, as a football player. But when you look at the rest of the safety depth, whether it's, Sheldrick Redwine, our 4th-round pick this year, Morgan Burnett, who's coming from the Steelers, Eric Murray, who we got in a trade with the Chiefs, and then I feel like and Jermaine Whitehead, who made some noise in the offseason but had a quiet preseason. I just look at that safety position as that whole group that they need to step up. Randall, we know what he's going to bring, but the rest of those guys are definitely going to have to make an impact because when you look at that strong safety position, they're pretty much going to be an extra linebacker in certain situations as well. Are they going to be able to stop tight ends? Tight end has been covering the tight end has been a big weakness for the Browns the last couple years. And we're going up against some tough tight ends starting this weekend with Delaney Walker. So if they can't cover, if they can't tackle, that's going to be a big flaw in our defense. We came into camp thinking that linebacker and defensive tackle were going to be issues, and I honestly don't look at that as the issues now. I think safety outside of Randall is definitely our big weakness as it stands right now on the defense.
The Browns finally settled on a kicker in Austin Seibert and the rookie punter, the Scottish Hammer. But I was wondering from you, having those two guys as rookies on the Browns, there are definitely going to be question marks. And does the kicking game for the Browns, field goals and everything that these two guys provide, does it just have to be average to equate overall team success? Yeah,
I think that the special teams unit is going to be a big factor in this team. Do they have to be average? What would you classify as average per se?
I would just say, missing the longer field goals, consistently making like the lower 40s ones, not always hitting the best of punts, not the Gillian going out there not being the Johnny Hecker from the Rams. So just somewhere in the middle in terms of field goals and punting.
Yeah, that would be okay if they were average per se, but I just don't want to go into a situation where, we lose games by 1 point, 2 points, just because, Seibert missed a couple extra points or missed a field goal. Like, I was watching the Panthers All or Nothing series, and Graham Gano missed an extra point and a field goal that caused the Panthers a game, which arguably pulled them out of the playoffs. Like, I don't want that to be the Browns' downfall. Like, our offense was so good, but we missed a field goal in a game or missed an extra point or two. So I hope Seibert, shakes off what he had to go through early on in camp, and he's automatic. And then with Gillian, like, I hope he continues to grow and make progress as a punter, and hopefully by the end of the season is like a Dave Zastadel type punter. Because if we get that kind of production out of Gillian, I feel like really good about those two going forward.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think hopefully Cyber can piece things together. We saw that he had some success. Hopefully he can build upon it. I know kicking in First Energy Stadium is not easy, based on what Phil Dawson and other kickers for the Browns have said, what it's like kicking in that stadium. So it's definitely not easy. But as long as you're accurate, they get the ball through the uprights. As Freddie Kitchens would say, that's your job. That's what they need to be doing. I think that we'll be okay. And I'm not going to sit here and guarantee that the special teams is going to be fantastic, but I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle of great and average. I don't know what that equates to, but I think that's where this team will be when it comes to all that. All right, before we get on out of here, we had two things we wanted to do. First, we have an over-under segment, and Jack, I'm going to give you a scenario, I'm going to give you a number, and I want to get your reaction of whether you think that will be over or will be under and why. So for the first one, Baker Mayfield touchdown passes. We set that number at 35. Over, under, and why?
I'm going with the over. I just think there's too much talent on that offensive side of the ball to where Baker Mayfield is not going to have. It's going to have that breakout season, that big jump from year one to year two. I mean, he's going to be able to spread the ball around, like we mentioned earlier. Beckham, Landry, Njoku, Higgins, Callaway. Demetrius Harris is going to get involved. We're going to see Chubb and Hunt come out of the backfield and get some receiving touchdowns. So I just really think Baker threw 27 touchdowns last year as a rookie. I can easily see him going over 35, and he might even eclipse 40 to maybe even 45 touchdowns in his second year. So I'm definitely taking the over.
All right, next one is Nick Chubb rushing yards, and we set that number at 1,250. So over and under on those.
I'm going with the over again. I really think that they're going to rely on the running game a lot. Like I said, Monken never had a running back like this in Tampa. Obviously, we know what Kitchens did, utilizing Chubb in the running game. And I know people are going to question what they're going to do with Kareem Hunt once he gets back. But like I said, in the second half of the year, you're going to feed Chubb the ball a lot because defenses are going to be worn down that second half of the year. Injuries are going to pile up. I definitely see Chubb going over the 1,000-yard mark this year for sure, and he's definitely going to go over to where he might even get 1,300, 1,400 yards.
All right, our brand new weapon on offense, Odell Beckham Jr. Will he have over or under 12 receiving touchdowns this season?
I'm going to say under. I say he gets in that 9 to 11 range because, like I said, with Mayfield, he's going to be able to spread the ball out. And I feel like you're going to see some times where guys are going to get open. Like they're going to be covering Beckham, and Landry's going to get his shots at a touchdown. I think Njoku's going to have a big year in terms of touchdown catches because while everybody's focusing on the receivers, I think Njoku could have a really breakout year. And then, like I said, they're spreading the ball around completely on that offensive side of the ball. So while people think Beckham's going to light it up and have like a monster year, just because Baker likes to spread the ball around, I don't think he gets over 12 touchdowns.
Yeah, I'm with you there on that one.
All right, Anthony. So I'm going to throw these at you now. Myles Garrett had, I think, 13 and a half sacks last year. We set the over-under at 15. Do you think Garrett goes over 15 sacks or under 15 sacks?
I'm going to go with the over just because I think week one he's going to have a ridiculous number. I don't know if it's going to be like 5, but I think he has a good shot at least having 3. without having Taylor Lewan there. So I'm going to set that one at the over, and I don't know off the top of my head what the single season sack record is, but there's definitely a good chance with this defensive line that he could come close to that.
The NFL's single season record is 22.5, and if Myles Garrett can get close to that, I think he's really going to hunt it down. Our final over-under is we're talking about the entire defensive side of the ball. Last year, they had 31 takeaways as a unit, which was second in the NFL. Anthony, do you think they go over or under that number in 2019?
I think that one's definitely going to be under. It is very difficult to force that many turnovers in consecutive years. A lot of things fell the Browns' way. You could call it luck, you could call it whatever you want, but the ball definitely bounced their way last year when it was fumbled. So for me, I think that one's a definite under 31.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. They got off to an historic start in terms of turnovers last year, and that number really inflated. But I do expect them to create a lot of turnovers, especially with that pass rush.
Oh, for sure. I think the pass rush is definitely going to be able to help them force turnovers, whether it be fumbles or forcing quarterbacks to make bad throws, and they pick them off. That defensive line is really going to wreak havoc towards everybody, and it's going to be absolutely exciting to watch. All right, the last thing before we get on out of here in our Brown season preview is we wanted to play the schedule game. I know this is a popular thing to play, but we're not going to have any antics behind it. We're just going to go through each game. I'm going to ask Jack. I'm going to list the opponent. He's going to give me a one-word answer, win-loss. You could throw tie in there, but hopefully we don't have any more of those. So, Jack, starting with let's say week one, because I feel like we should get that on our preview show, game preview show coming out tomorrow. So we'll say week one, but week two at New York Jets.
Oh, this is going to be a tough one for sure, but I'm just going to say, we're on prime time. Browns win.
Sunday night at home against the LA Rams.
That one will be a loss, unfortunately.
Going on the road at Baltimore.
Win.
On the road, Monday Night Football at San Francisco 49ers.
I'll say loss.
All right, so we're sitting at 2-2 right now. Home against Seattle.
Win.
Will the Cleveland Browns lose a bye week like they have done in many years past?
Hell no.
Okay. At New England.
Win.
At Denver.
Win.
Home against Pittsburgh. On Thursday Night Football.
Win.
Home against Miami.
Win. I don't know if you heard me the first time.
On the road at Pittsburgh.
We're going to say loss on that one.
Home against Cincinnati.
Win.
On the road at Arizona, Baker Mayfield versus Cliff Kingsbury.
Win, with Baker doing what he did to Hugh with a stare down that might go on for 10 minutes.
Home against Baltimore.
We'll say a loss on that one.
And then on the road at Cincinnati.
Closing out the season with a W.
Okay, I hope you kept track. I counted 4 losses. Is that correct? Or was there 5?
I think there was 5.
Okay, so right now we're sitting at 10-5, and then we have the Tennessee prediction, which we'll do on our show tomorrow. So, Jack, 10-5. What would you say is a best case scenario? You kind of wavered on a couple of those games. Well, what do you think the absolute maximum number was they could reach this season is?
I would say probably, I'd say 13. I think 13-3 would be like the best case scenario, just because I think the Browns, like if they catch fire, I think you could go on one of these runs where they just, they will not back down from anybody, and their defense will just come in and punch you in the mouth. And with that defensive front, I don't know if many teams can make a counter move like that. So I definitely think the Browns can go on a run where they win like 6 or 7 in a row, and the NFL world will just be focused on Cleveland. So 13-3, I think, would be the definite best case scenario.
All right, I know nobody wants to ask this, and unfortunately I'm in the position to have to ask you this. What is the worst case scenario when it comes to the record?
Worst case scenario for me would be like, I'd say 6-10, maybe 7-9. First of all, I think there's just too much talent, but maybe they do get into a spot where they're just they're believing the hype too much, and they make some mistakes and it costs them some wins. Like, this team's still young, and this, while they went 7-8-1 last year, they have to learn how to win these big games. And there's a lot of big games this year. I think there's at least 4 primetime games. Then you have to factor in some of these 425 games, which are practically primetime games. So, they're going to have to come in and play every game like it's the Super Bowl, essentially. And, sometimes if they overhype themselves up, losses are going to come. But the one thing, I just don't see this team falling flat on their face. But if they do, they're going to float around like a 500 record, I think. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think worst case it's going to be around 500, 7-9 or 8-8. I think you mentioned there is way too much talent on this football team to be anywhere below that. And if they are, something catastrophic happened. Whether they lost multiple offensive linemen to injury, or heaven forbid Baker got hurt. I think that's the only way that they don't reach that 7-9, 8-8 plateau in terms of the record.
Definitely. What do you think? We're just going to go ahead and do it. What do you think is going to be their record for this year? Because I made mine. So what do you think?
Oh, I was. Why don't you ask me? Let's go through the schedule game for me.
Okay. Week 2, Monday night against the Jets.
That is going to be a win.
Okay. Week 3, Sunday night against the Rams.
That is also going to be a win.
All right. Going to Baltimore, week 4.
Unfortunately, that'll be a loss.
Okay. Week 5, Monday Night Football against the 49ers.
That'll be a win.
All right. Coming back home to play Seattle.
That'll be a win as well.
All right. We go through the bye week, then we come back and play the defending Super Bowl champion New England Patriots.
That'll be a loss.
All right. Going back to Denver to play Joe Flacco and the Broncos.
That will be a win.
Okay. Pittsburgh at home.
That'll be a win.
All right. Miami, I don't even need to ask you that. That's a win. Thursday night in Pittsburgh.
Oh, both the Pittsburgh games are Thursday night?
Or is it the home one?
No, the home one's for sure Thursday night. I know that.
Okay. So the away game's I'm sorry. At Pittsburgh.
That'll be a win.
Oh, my God. Cincinnati.
That's one you don't have to ask. That'll be a win.
All right, Arizona.
That'll be a loss. I know it's going to be the bad loss of the year.
All right. Baltimore.
A win.
And at Cincinnati to close out the season.
That will be a win.
So you're sitting at 12-3.
Correct.
And
you
were
sitting,
I was
you were sitting at
10-5. You were
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you're at 12-3. I'm at 10-5, and I'm sure everybody can guess how we're going to think Sunday's going to go. But so Anthony with 12-3 record, and I with a 10-5. I think we're both agreeing that we're going to the playoffs.
You damn right we're going.
This is the big question. Do you think we win a playoff game this year? Okay. So do you think we win a playoff game?
I'll go even further. We will win a home playoff game.
Ooh. All right. So answer me this question. And, we'll put out our NFL preview thing on Twitter before Thursday night. How do you think the season ends for the Browns? I'll let you go first, and then I'll close it out.
You will find out during our NFL predictions.
Why do you have to tease the people like that?
You got to. You got to bring them back. Got to bring them back for more.
All right.
I would imagine you're going to give me the same answer.
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and just tell people how I think it's going to play out.
You're breaking protocol.
I had the Browns going 11-5. We're breaking. Okay. Try to get this in real quick. I think the Browns win a playoff game. I think they win the wild card round. And then, unfortunately, they lose in the divisional round. But I just think that's going to be what makes this team even hungrier. And then next year, we're really talking Super Bowl, which is just crazy because a couple years ago, we were coming off a 0-16 season. But I'm just so ready for this season to get started.
And you know what? If somehow there's kind of a lull, maybe like week 8, 9, and 10 or something, and then they get onto a hot streak late in the year, especially against those really poor teams, those last 4 weeks, Cincinnati, Arizona, Baltimore, Cincinnati again, and they go into the playoffs really hot, anything can happen. I'll just say that.
Oh, I would agree with you, definitely.
All right, Jack, as we get on out of here, wrap this preview show up. I know we went a lot longer than we anticipated, especially for somebody who is extremely sleep deprived. Did I forget anything? It'd be a miracle if I didn't.
No, you were actually good. Despite your... I'm shocked that you didn't fall asleep while we were recording, but you were good.
I may have come close a couple of times. I may have come close. All right, Jack.
You were good, though, man.
Plug what you got so we can get out of here and I can go to bed.
As always, follow me on Twitter at jmccurrycle. And check out bigplay.com. I'm one of the writers over there. I'm covering the New Orleans Saints, so definitely check that stuff out. I'll have some Saints content out later this week if y'all care to read it.
As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Anthony Joki, Joki. We probably should have led with this, but we have something pretty awesome coming down the road. I'm sure you have seen our coming soon photo on our Twitter account and our Facebook at 1085 Gridiron. If you haven't, go check that out, and also keep your eyes out for something that will be dropping very soon. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. We absolutely appreciate it. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Google Play. And with all that, as we get out of here, I'll leave you with this, as I do at the end of every episode, and that is, go Browns, and specifically tonight, because I'm so tired, good night.